Hello there. This is Jen T. Grace. I'm the founder of Publish Your Purpose, and I am sitting here with Dr. Michael Stokes, and we are talking about the launch of your new book, Mr. Answers to the Questions You're Afraid to Ask. So I have questions in relation to your book, but I would love for you to start off just kind of sharing a little bit about your background, who you are, and kind of like maybe how you came to being an author in the first place.
Yeah. So first and foremost, I'm a husband, a dad, a licensed therapist, certified sex therapist, started my work with children and families, morphed that into working with adults. And then as I sort of evolved as a therapist and like evolved as a human, really my work took me to working with men and couples who are struggling with identity and sexuality and sort of navigating the world and really like unpacking some of the most like vulnerable, sensitive topics that we don't talk about often in our society, at least in a productive way. And so I have a ton of experience working, in the like private sector, the public sector. And so, I have this sort of mission to do all of the things. And so as I was, sort of doing this work that feels so private, I'm meeting with these men one-on-one and these couples and talking about like, the most important, intimate details of their life, these questions continue to surface that were just recurrent questions. I can almost like predict they were going to come up in session. And I said, wow, like it would be amazing to have a platform to like really answer some of these that I know most guys are wanting the answers to. And then I said, I need to find time to write this book. And so here I am.
Wow. Yeah. I love that because sometimes, like sometimes authors will have, like a blog or sometimes like to me, it almost feels like a very like Dear Abby. Like if we go like real back in the day, like Dear Abby style, like advice column, like sometimes people start with that and then they morph it into a book. And sometimes it's like, we'll start with the book and then that can kind of like turn into the advice column. So I love that you were kind of already thinking about like the interconnectedness to all of it. And I think that's when you really know your clients well, is when you can almost predict like what the next question is going to be or the next thing that they're going to ask and make them feel safe for having asked those questions to begin with.
Yeah. And I think, in addition to like some of the questions that come up in session, one of the like interesting things, about my work is like just sort of navigating the world. Right. And so, oftentimes people ask me sort of casually, like, what do you do? And so sometimes I'll give them a variation. And so sometimes I'll say I'm a therapist. Other times I'll say I'm a sex therapist. And so when I do say I'm a sex therapist and it is to like another guy, usually there's either a sort of chuckle or like sort of an offhanded joke about that, or like I was signing up to join a new gym last year, and as the guy was like filling out the membership stuff, he was asking me what I do. I said I'm a sex therapist working with men, and so he's like, "All right, can I ask you a question?" And I'm like, "Yes, this is exactly the stuff that I love." Yeah. So I'm like, "Yeah, of course." And so these are the things that kind of come up in real life, like as I'm sort of navigating meeting new people.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And so when we think about like the structure of your book, so like I'm really thinking about like if there's someone who's listening to this conversation, whether it's live while we're talking or sometime after, like can you share a little bit of like how they kind of utilize the book? Because even with the subtitle of Answers to the Questions You're Afraid to Ask, I think that's so perfect. And I also love that it's called Mr. because there's nothing about the title or the cover itself that is screaming like, hey, here's this book about all of the things that you're so embarrassed about, because I feel like that would be so maybe fear inducing even for someone to actually like comfortably feel like they can pick this up and read it. So can you just kind of share like the structure for the, someone who might want to buy it?
Yeah, sure. So the book is broken up in chapters that are framed as questions. These are the questions that are like most common, right? So, as I was writing the book, thinking about, all right, what would be the best format for, men who don't have a ton of time to like devote into reading. Maybe they want to kind of like read a chapter or two and then put it down for, you know, a couple of weeks and then read it again. And so it really is designed to hone in on like whatever question the chapter has. And so, you know, it sort of blends the like research, you know, along with my experience sort of like working with men and couples, and providing good information. There's tons of stuff out there, whether it's Google, Reddit, you can find anything and everything. The problem is that like not all of it is great. And so a lot of it is conflicting. A lot of it is like very sales based. And so like I think there's like a lot of scare tactics that are done in this like sex education realm of like, sign up to get these pills or these creams and like that's going to fix your problem. And you know, I think men really want the information so that they can make informed decisions, right? If like pills or creams or whatever is like actually what they want and desire, then like do that, but like get the information first and then make an informed decision.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of like it's almost like a choose your own adventure because it is so question based. So if someone has a real specific kind of lens and area of questions that they want to go down, they don't have to read the book in a linear kind of chronological fashion.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Which makes it great from a user experience, right? Because like you're there to kind of solve the problem, help the reader figure out what they need, and then they can kind of make that informed decision forward.
Absolutely. And I think it you know creates a dynamic where you could purchase the book and you could read it together as a couple. And so the like audience is intended for men, but like I think having your partner read it will, you know, provide a level of understanding and, you know, maybe a you know, a sense of education around like what they didn't know or like what they may want to learn more about. And what's neat is that, you know, during some of the chapters, you know, if there are additional resources that I have on my website, for example, it's going to point you there. It kind of like spells out how to find a therapist, right? Like maybe this is a conversation you need to dive deeper into. And so if it is bringing up stuff, it kind of guides you into like, all right, how do you find the right fit?
Yeah. Yeah. It's very kind of multifaceted and, you know, functional in so many different ways, which I think is incredible. And I'm wondering if you can speak to a little bit about, because there's obviously the audience that is the person themselves who wants this information, but then there are other people who might be orbiting that person, such as other therapists or other providers of some other kind. So can you kind of speak to maybe someone who might be watching this, who might be a provider and they're like, oh, wow, maybe this is a book that I want to, you know, pass along to a client of mine?
Yeah. I think out of my experience, I think clinicians, you know, mental health providers usually point to men being probably one of their most difficult clients. And like, I think that is that occurs for like a couple different reasons. One, I think we are in a very female dominating you know, field. So there are not a lot of male therapists out there. And I do think that men want something different from therapy than like women. And, you know, men want concrete solutions. They want the like coaching and support rather than like diving into the kind of like touchy feely, let's kind of dive into your childhood right away. Let's kind of like really talk about what's bringing you in, right? And so, you know, I think it's just you know, I think it's just helpful for, you know, clinicians to really you know, understand what are some of the common questions men are coming to the table with, because probably a lot of their clients are asking themselves these questions that maybe, you know, maybe they're like hesitant to bring that up in like the therapy room. And, you know, a lot of this stuff, you know, they're not talking about with their therapist, their primary doctor. And so who are they talking about it with? Usually Google at 2 a.m. is like usually who they're talking to about this stuff. So, you know, the book is designed for multiple audiences and certainly a resource for, medical providers to offer to their patients.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I love that this is gonna be such a helpful tool for so many people, especially, like, if you are Googling and then you're finding conflicting information
Mhm.
or, like, not maybe that level of concrete information that you're saying that, someone really is likely looking for. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And so in terms of, like, the bigger ecosystem around your work, right? So obviously, as you were working on the book, things were evolving and unfolding and new opportunities were rising because clearly you have a handle on what men need based on just your years in practice. So do you want to just kind of share a little bit of kind of like the larger things that are kind of orbiting the book as well?
Yeah, as I was like forming and framing some of these questions that men ask and like later became chapters, right? Sort of thinking about like what other comprehensive services men are like looking for, and where are the gaps in the market, right? Like where are they like trying to lead to and kind of hitting a dead end, or like maybe there are resources out there that are just not so helpful. So my website mrhealth.com provides free resources. I have a blog, I have a podcast that really dives into sort of an array of topics around men's mental health and sexual health. And I have a porn reboot course, so men who are struggling with the relationship with porn and wanting a sex positive resource to really understand like why are they struggling in this area. That course is available. I have an ebook and a course on performance anxiety, kind of walks you through step by step of like what that is, like why do men struggle with like anxiety during sex, what do you do about it. So really sort of a guide that is step by step, including the course that kind of dives more into hands-on, including meditations and some other helpful strategies.
Yeah. Yeah, and what do you see maybe as the future of all of this? Because you have such a robust foundation already. Are you already, because what I did not say at the top of this conversation is that today is your actual launch day. Like it
Yeah.
is launch day right now in real time, which is such a joy for me to be able to talk to you on launch day because there's like there's different energy and excitement. And it's like if you're watching this or today's the 21st, so please help support the book getting higher in the rankings by getting your copy today. And it's so freshly out that maybe you don't have that feedback yet from people of like, hey, I see what you're doing and I would love if you did this. Like,
Yeah.
do you have any ideas of what that could look like?
Yeah, 100%. So, writing the book has like, sort of launched a flurry of different like, ideas and opportunities that I think men would really, really appreciate and need. And, really kind of facilitated this idea to form Mr. Health Counseling in Massachusetts, where we are a small group practice, and we provide individual and family couples therapy to men and couples. And so that being an insurance-based practice and really kind of like hitting on that intersection of mental health and sexual health. But thinking about all of the like pie in the sky kinds of things, a men's health conference, sort of like how do we reach more men that like need this information, is like sort of top of mind, but like something that continues to come up for the like professional community that I'm connected to. A lot of my fellow clinicians and like medical providers are like, when are you going to offer CEU trainings about this stuff?
Yeah.
So that is coming soon. I don't have any details about that, but that is part of the future offerings that we will be offering topic trainings on topics for like an array of men's mental health and sexual health, just to help clinicians really feel better equipped to dealing with what are the presenting problems men are bringing into the room.
Yeah. And when you like started kind of like down this specific path from your, like your practice standpoint, you are obviously noticing a need, at least in the local areas that you're serving people. Is this a widespread, like global issue that really people, like men in particular, are really just kind of struggling to find the right information? And are there other kind of people that have a specialty similar to yours, or are you kind of like really kind of out there forging ahead?
Yeah, I think that, we are all trying to do the best work that we can. There's certainly plenty of folks that are passionate about men's mental health. There's plenty of people focused on men's sexual health. I think that I sort of stand in a pretty unique corner of saying, hey, we're kind of talking about one and the same, and I'm here at the intersection, sort of like waving the men's health, sexual health flag, saying like, hey, this is actually something we should be talking about together, because they're like one and the same, and so they impact all of us. And so we all, as men, struggle with our mental health at some point in like life and transition, as well as our sexual health.
Yeah.
And from being a child to like a teenager, there are not a ton of mental health, sexual health resources out there, other than that terrible health ed class that you probably were required to sit through, that you like giggled the entire time. So you really weren't like listening or taking it in. But there's really not a lot of resources out there, like, other than Googling at 2 a.m. that, men can, feel comfortable and confident. And there's also admittedly a lot of medical professionals who are either not comfortable or not adequately trained in the area of sexual health. And so they may shut down the conversation early. They may not really leave room for men to bring up these issues at their appointments. Like, the medical healthcare system in the US is broken as it is. So here we are just adding another layer of just, it's difficult to bring up this stuff.
Yeah. Do you think that your book will also help make anyone who's read it a better kind of advocate for themselves when they're maybe talking to any type of healthcare provider, whether it's physical or mental?
Absolutely. The goal and mission is to make this into everyday conversation.
Yeah.
This really needs to be normalized. We all go through it. Yet there is this element that's like socially constructed that says, hey, we're not supposed to talk about this.
Yeah.
And, if we do, we should like, whisper about it or like talk about it in code, because we're not quite sure if it's like totally allowed. And so, it's my hope that we can talk about these topics in like a very direct, normalized manner. That is my like mission with my clients. I talk about that all the time, that like we talk about what's for dinner, like, food and like eating is like a biological need of ours. So is sex. And so like, as we're talking and negotiating about like, what do we want to have for dinner with our partner or our friends? Like, we should be talking about sex in the same way, because they're really not that much different.
Yeah.
But our society says that they are.
Yeah. Which, many issues with how our society functions.
Yeah.
I'm curious from a social media standpoint, or like things like TikTok. Like, this is obviously not a side of TikTok that I would be on. But is that starting to help open conversations too, of just kind of like social media, making it like maybe reducing stigma a little bit?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the feedback has been mixed in terms of putting this on social media. The feedback either has been, this has been really helpful and it like kind of opens my eyes. And then I've also received the feedback of like, it is really uncomfortable to scroll on Facebook and have you talking about porn. And just, the way you talk about it is just like so like normalized, and you're just very, very direct about it. And so that becomes uncomfortable. Admittedly, I'm I'm old, so I'm still trying to learn the TikTok, as I say. So I'm like dipping my toe into the TikTok world. So
Yeah.
that is certainly a audience that I
Hmm.
will get to know a little bit more
Hmm.
in terms of videos. But yeah, I think the feedback has been mixed, which is like pretty consistent with like
Hmm.
where we are in our society,
Yeah.
which is like we can watch and like really like value highly sexual things in like
Hmm.
media, but
Hmm.
when we're actually going to talk about them and like insert ourselves in
Yeah.
that becomes really vulnerable. But like
Mhm.
watching two people like have sex during a show, like
Mhm.
you
No
can
big deal.
eat your
Yeah.
popcorn and soda and like not think about it. But
Yeah.
you're talking about like, hey, let me tell you about my sexual
Mhm.
experience that I had last night.
Mhm.
That becomes like, whoa, we're having this deep conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I never thought of it that way, like how like just disconnected things are from that standpoint. That's really
Mhm.
fascinating. Wow. Interesting. I love working on books generally, but it's always fun when I get to learn about topics that I otherwise wouldn't necessarily have a lot of insight into. So this is awesome. Any other kind of things that are kind of on your radar, or any final thoughts, or like my final question is usually like if you're kind of waving a magic wand and we're a year away, a year out from your book having launched, and someone comes up to you and is kind of sharing how their book impacted them, like what's your hope that they might be saying to you in that conversation?
Yeah. I think because this is so deeply personal for me, and certainly writing it was like a vulnerable experience to, put these thoughts and ideas on paper and slap it to my name.
Mhm.
I want to be able to reach people who have these questions and they're not quite sure where to turn, and
Mhm.
so you know, should that person come up to me and say, look, I've been trying to Google this question for the last couple of years and
Mhm.
not really sure what happened, or this chapter that you wrote about relationships really resonated with me.
Yeah.
That's the hope, right? Like I really hope that like somebody will read it and take something away from it.
Mm.
Even if it's like that that helps normalize and like opens the conversation
Mhm.
to be thinking about how they could further support their mental health or sexual
Yeah.
health,
Yeah.
or having an open conversation with their partner.
Mhm.
That would be my hope. But
Yeah.
access is like one of the pieces that's like super important.
Mhm.
And like literally like this is the book that I wish that I had like as a 16, 17-year-old boy trying to
Mhm.
figure out like, all right, well, how do I navigate this like
Mhm.
world as my like life is changing, my body's changing, relationships are changing. And so the book sort of addresses an array of topics, but like I think certainly from that like teenage, early adulthood,
Mhm.
all the way up to middle and late adulthood, depending on where you are in your life. But
Yeah.
certainly this book for me is like, this is the book that I wish that I had in my in my library, in my book bag, so that
Mhm.
I could like reference it and
Yeah.
just feel like someone got it, right? Someone was talking about the questions that I was having that I thought were like, should I be asking that? Like, should I
Yeah.
know this? Uh,
Mhm.
and like, God, I can't ask anybody about this stuff. Like, I don't
Mhm.
have anybody in my life that I would feel comfortable even like
Yeah.
mentioning some of these words to. So
Yeah.
that would
Yeah.
be my hope.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's a good kind of just acknowledgement of another audience in this, is that someone who could give this book to that person in their life, whether it is a, like you were saying, like 16, 17, early, early adult, because it's uncomfortable conversations for a lot of people who are not just kind of skilled in making it feel so smooth and natural
Mhm.
and like a non-issue like you do, which is obviously why you do this work, and why I'm not surprised that people are like, you should be doing videos,
Mhm.
because I can see you kind of being on whatever platform, but just kind of just making things so matter of fact that it's like, this doesn't have to be this big scary thing. Like if we can just all normalize
Yeah.
all of these things, like life for everybody would be so much easier.
Yeah. One of the things I tell my clients all the time that I did not learn in grad school and have not read in a textbook, but I say all the time, like, it's not that deep. Like
Yeah.
it's part of life. Like
Yeah.
we don't have to go down the rabbit hole of
Mhm.
anxiety and like
Yeah.
overthink this.
Yeah.
It is
It's a
what
good
it is.
takeaway. It's not that deep.
It's not
Yeah.
that deep.
Some things are. Some things aren't. It's just, it is what it is.
Mhm.
That's funny.
Yeah.
This has been an awesome conversation. I really appreciate you and the work that you're doing. So, as we were talking about before, I'll put your website back up here again. So, it's mrhealth.com. And your book is available on online retailers right now as of today. So, certainly go check it out, whether it's Amazon or Barnes and Noble or Books a Million or bookshop.org, which is my favorite. Just go and, purchase, get the book. And, it's a great gift giving book, I think, too. It's like we were just saying. So, if not for yourself, get it for someone who, needs it, get it for your partner, right? Like,
Mhm.
it makes everybody's life a little bit better. So I really appreciate everything that you're kind of up to in this world.
Yes, thank you. I really appreciate all of your help and guidance, and this has been great. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you are very welcome. All right. Thank you. And I'll see